patience, reduction is not the same as reaching the finishing line. Gray, white, red, hormonal, and previously treated hair can remain difficult or impossible to address with just laser alone. When practices do not have a clear solution for those patients, they may be overlooking an important gap in both the patient journey and their service mix. Welcome back to the Business of Aesthetics podcast. I'm your host for this session, Don Adeesha. And joining us today is Alana Zurek, founder and CEO of Beverly Hills Hairfree and CEO of Electrology Tech. With nearly 3 decades of experience in permanent hair removal, Alana has built her career around advancing multi-probe galvanic electrolysis, educating practitioners, and helping patients achieve results when traditional hair removal options may no longer provide the complete answer. Now, today we will be exploring the patient gap practices miss when they rely only on laser, how owners can determine whether their demand justifies adding electrolysis, and what the multi-probe galvanic model means for service line economics, and how practices can train their teams and position permanent removal effectively during consultations. This episode is brought to you by Echo Marketing. Alana, welcome back to the Business of Aesthetics podcast.
Thank you so much, Don. It's really good to be back.
Absolutely. So, Alana, let's get into it. What patient gap do established med spas miss when they rely only on laser removal?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the follow-up to that question, because we spoke about this in our first podcast as well, but since some time has passed, I'm starting to learn that there's more to the patient gap than we actually, or the client gap than we actually discussed. So it's a two-part question. The first part is what laser clinics are missing is they have no way of treating the clients that are gray-haired, salt and pepper, blonde hair clients, even redheads, which is about 75% of the population. So they're missing that entire revenue stream. Additionally, I have since been on a lot of, let's just say, message boards, and the technicians are also having issues selling laser packages. This is what I'm hearing from many of the techs that are currently either owners or they're working for the med spas. They're claiming that it's getting more and more difficult and challenging to sell these packages because the clients are starting to understand that it is a lifetime commitment. There is no permanent hair removal with the laser. So I hope that answers your question. And I'm starting to see an aspect of the med spa that I haven't seen before, where the techs are now coming forward and talking about how it's been challenging to sell these packages to the clients.
Would you be able to walk us through a typical patient journey in which laser delivered meaningful reduction, but could not provide the final result, just so we can have a broader understanding of the problem here?
Yeah, so I'm really glad you asked that, because recently I had a client who came to me who did have laser treatment on her face. And she came to her first session with me because she didn't think that she had the kind of results that they promised her. So in other words, she saw reduction, but not significant enough to just continue her laser sessions. So at her first session, we both said, wow, you don't have that much hair. I think you're going to be a great candidate for this. Each time she came back for her monthly appointment, we both noticed there was more and more hair. Yeah. So I asked her about that, and I said, well, what do you think is causing it? I already know how laser works, because to me, after almost 30 years of watching this phenomenon, I know that if you don't go to your laser session, the hair comes back. So because she stopped going to laser and she started electrolysis treatment, and she wasn't doing anything in the interim except shaving, she noticed that all the hair that she had paid for with her laser sessions had come back, which was very uncomfortable for her. So we agreed that when she first started, definitely wasn't the kind of hair that she had at her fourth session.
Okay. And also, does laser actually encourage hair growth? I mean,
Yeah, so that's another phenomenon. It's called paradoxical hypertrichosis. And we have had many clients in our office because what the laser does is it stimulates the androgen hormone. So, for example, if somebody already has a hormonal imbalance and they don't know it and the laser tech doesn't know it, the laser will do the opposite. Instead of getting rid of the hair, it will actually make the hair growth worse. So I have had ladies in my clinic who started off with just peach fuzz, fine hair along their sideburns, and they end up with thick, dark, coarse hair right on the chin. And that is devastating because you're paying for sessions for the laser to help you with a, mediocre problem. And then you end up with more facial hair. And now it's so coarse and thick, and you have to pay more money to get rid of that hair. It's also devastating while you're going through the process and you go in to get something removed, you come back out, and now you have more hair, and now you have a whole new problem. So
indeed.
those are the kinds of things that I'm seeing in my clinic.
Okay. So you're not necessarily seeing first time walk-ins, but rather ones who have already tried the treatment and
We
didn't
are
really get the.
seeing walk-ins for electrolysis, and it's funny because when you asked me the first question, what is the gap? There's also the hormonal gap that we didn't discuss, or maybe you and I discussed it, but a lot of laser techs, they won't know that somebody has a hormonal imbalance unless the
Mhm.
client tells them, and oftentimes the client doesn't know that they have a hormonal imbalance either. So it's kind of a very touchy situation where you don't really know that you're going to put more hair on the client, but it happens because the client doesn't know that they have a hormonal imbalance as well. Yes, we do get first-time walk-ins, and the majority of our clients who come in to see us already have done their research about electrolysis and laser. And so they know that electrolysis is the only way of achieving permanent results. They don't want to risk the laser alternative at this point. They don't want to try it just to see if it's going to work or not. They would rather invest their money in a solution that they know is going to be permanent within, 18 to 24 months.
Okay. Now, how can practice owners determine whether gray, white, red, hormonal, or failed laser hair cases justify adding multiprobe galvanic electrolysis into their practice?
Well, I think at this point, it's 2026. It's really a no-brainer. Are you going to be able to treat the clients that you know are not laser candidates, or are you going to leave that entire market, you know, to somebody else? Because we now know that it's not a maybe, it is not going to work for blonde hair, gray hair, red hair. And now we know that anybody who has a hormonal imbalance is not a laser candidate as well. So if I'm a med spa owner, I'm absolutely going to add multi-probe galvanic to my treatments.
Hmm. Are there any particular information that you or a practice owner should be collecting during a 60 or 90-day demand audit?
In terms of getting this into their
Just
practice,
to see if the demand is strong enough to get
I think they're going to be able to see that. I'm learning a lot from my clients who are traveling from other cities and locations, and they're finding us because their laser techs are telling them that laser is not working.
Hmm. So if
So
you're giving that answer.
yeah, I think at this point it's more of when do we get multi-probe galvanic in? And, we talked about this before. Should they throw away their laser? No. I do know med spas that are getting rid of them. I think that laser still has its place. For example, if someone's going on vacation or you're going out of the country and you don't want to shave and you don't want to go through electrolysis treatments because you want to start them when you come back, that is a perfect thing for you to do in the meantime. If you're taking some kind of medication that prevents you from starting a treatment like electrolysis. Like, for example, we can't treat anybody who takes Accutane. It's very drying for the skin and the client has to stop. So certain medications that are either applied to the skin or taken orally, we ask our clients stop before they start the treatment. I'm not exactly sure if that's a risk for laser clients as well, or laser candidates, but that would be another alternative solution. If the client wants to finish their medication 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, that might be another option for them. The other thing that we recommend is if somebody starts electrolysis, they're obviously going to make a considerable investment in the beginning until they get to a point where they don't have as much hair and they're not coming in as often. Sometimes
Mm,
people want to save that money to start in a year or two. So that would be another way that they could keep, hair free for temporary time and go for laser treatments until they're ready to start. But I do want to say that if you look at the price and the cost analysis, laser is not cheaper than electrolysis.
mm. Okay, okay. Uh, Something there that you mentioned is you do figure out like what kind of medication the clients are taking and to see if they qualify for an electrolysis treatment, right? Is that something that you do with every client or?
Yeah, so our consultations are incredibly thorough. The reason being, I've been in this industry for 30 years. And for somebody like yourself or myself who doesn't have a major facial hair issue, it's not devastating. But for somebody who's looking for a solution to go to get a treatment and then end up with more hair, like we discussed when it comes to paradoxical hypertrichosis, that is more devastation on top of what the client was looking to reduce in the first place. So our consultations are very thorough. If I am on the phone with a client, and by the way, we don't even need to do in-person consultations. Um, we ask that the client submit photos of whatever area they want treated. And we ask them to explain to us what they're looking to achieve. Once we get those photos, and we ask for a couple of them so that we can examine the skin, the hair, and sometimes we as professionals will notice things the client doesn't notice. We're also looking for other things that the client may not be aware of. Once we receive the photos, we will figure out how much time this client needs in order to get them to achieve the results they're searching for. So everything is disclosed right there in the open. And if the client decides they need more time to think about it, that's fine. I noticed I've been doing this 30 years. When a person is ready, they're ready and they want to get treated tomorrow. When they're not ready, that's okay because our best client is an educated client. Consumers are smart and eventually they figure out what's working and what's not working.
That's right. And I really appreciate you bringing that point up. An educated client is a great client to have. And do you also charge for that consultation, that triage that
No,
happens over the phone?
no,
Oh,
and that is by choice that we don't. I know a lot of electrologists do because it's their time and they bring the person into the office. Since we don't need to bring the person into the office, I can basically conduct a consultation on the phone. I don't even need to see the person. Sometimes that is a lot more comfortable for the person calling in because if you're a first-time electrolysis client, you don't know what to expect. A lot of clients can be very nervous. So it kind of breaks the ice when I give them all the information over the phone and I say, you can think about it. Send me the photos. When I get the photos, we'll discuss your treatment plan and everybody gets an individualized treatment plan because everybody's hair issue is different. Some people are on camera. We have that a lot in our California location. So they have to be careful when they get their treatment because the camera picks everything up. So we discuss with them when they're available. Somebody who travels to our location, for example, from out of the country, they're not going to want to spend an hour in our office. So for those clients, it's important that we plan out if they're here for 3 days, that we can keep them and treat them for those 3 days. So they're not wasting their time. For somebody
Got
who's
it.
local, for example, they may only want to come in for an hour or two. We rarely get clients who plan out their own treatment because they don't know what to do. Um, but for somebody who's got a couple of, menopausal whiskers, obviously she lives close by. She's going to come in for 15 or 30 minutes. That's very different than somebody who's flying in on internationally to get a full facial beard removed. This is why
That
it's
makes
so important to get a thorough consultation. We also want to know, do they have unrealistic expectations? I always say, even when I teach my program, the consultation is really more for us, the professional, than for the client. Because if
okay.
it's not realistic and the client has these expectations that they're going to walk out after 2 treatments and they're going to be completely hair free and they're never going to come back, that's obviously not going to happen. If I can get that person on the phone and speak to them and understand that, then I can determine whether or not it's somebody I even want to take on as a client.
Mm,
I think with
great.
laser, just to, kind of give you an example, laser seems to be more of a transactional business. There's no real personal relationship with clients, and that's the biggest difference. And that's okay, but they're two very different business models. For example, I
Absolutely.
had a client who flew in um, from a different state and she spent almost 7 hours with me and we did her legs. She booked 2 days and we got done in one, so she didn't have to come the other day. So you get very close and personal, and we build relationships with our clients. They're also very grateful when they're done.
Mm, I
I
can
think
see that.
that's the difference with laser. It's a very transactional business. A client comes in, gets their session, they leave, money's exchanged, and that's kind of, rinse and repeat and how that happens. So I
Mm,
wanted people to understand that it's a very different business model. We are so much more about relationships. And this is why clients who finish their treatment and can move out of town, they don't want to go for their last like 15-minute sessions to where they're moving to. They would rather get on a plane and come back here to get that done.
that's an amazing loyalty to the brand, Alana. So let's talk a little bit about how the multi-probe galvanic model might change the economics of electrolysis compared to a traditional single probe treatment. How does
Yeah.
it do that?
So single probe operators rely on how fast they can work their magic, how quickly they can get through a client. And it is exhausting. And I know this because the first 2 years of my career, I did single probe and I didn't like it, and my clients didn't like it. So I'm very grateful that I got to switch over, and I've been practicing multi probe for almost the last 30 years. So the difference between the models is a single probe technician has to rely on how fast they can treat a client. Multi-probe technicians basically decide, how many treatments do I want to do today? And
Okay.
that's the difference.
Okay.
So
How? Yeah.
I can elaborate. Yep. So if you think about a single probe technician, they are literally tied to the client. They can't take their eyes off the client. They're in the same position, locked in for an hour, 5 hours, 2 hours, whatever the treatment time. And this pretty much happens every single day. For a multi-probe practitioner, the probes basically do the work themselves. Once you insert 32 probes, you basically can sit back and stretch a little bit until all the probes are finished. You can work in many different ways. You can do 8 probes at a time, 16, or all 32, and it just depends. So you have a much larger canvas, much more flexibility, and your body doesn't get as tired. And the
Mm,
client is very much pain-free because here's the difference. When you're practicing single probe electrolysis, you get the current because we use current, whether it's heat or it's galvanic, it's still a current. And you're getting that current in a tiny little pinpoint where you can spread that out into 16 and 32 probes. Now it's no longer concentrated in one tiny little tip. So it's incredibly comfortable.
Okay, so from a comfort perspective, it seems that multi-probe is the way to go as well, isn't it?
It
So
is.
then how should a practice look at structuring their training so that multi-probe galvanic electrolysis becomes a scalable service line?
I think that they should look at the training as an extension of the laser treatment because when the client is no longer receiving laser treatments because it either didn't work or we know it doesn't, it's not permanent. They can simply switch them over to the multi-probe galvanic, which is great with body work in large areas where single probe is not. And that was one of the drawbacks, right? Because laser's so quick and single probe electrolysis is very monotonous if you're working on a back or a large area, legs, where multi-probe takes care of that. So the only thing that needs to happen is the shift. It should be taught as the permanent solution after somebody is done with laser or gets the reduction that they wanted, because we know they're not going to get permanent results with laser.
Okay, we know that. And hopefully our listeners are also being enlightened towards the process of multi-probe galvanic
I've
treatment.
had a couple of med spa owners reach out to me because they saw my last podcast with you and they were
Right.
interested. And I think that in addition to the med spas, I think dermatologists are starting to understand that too, because they're sending their clients over to the laser clinics. And let's not forget, doctors make money off of laser because in some states you can't operate a laser or have it in your practice unless you have a doctor on staff. So they're also making money off the laser, but they're starting to understand that they can't send their gray-haired client to a laser tech or a redhead to a laser tech or somebody who has a hormonal imbalances. And the same doctor that's treating that client for the hormonal imbalance still doesn't realize that they can't do laser on that client because she has a hormonal imbalance. So that's starting to come to light now too.
That's amazing. I'm just curious, over the past 30 years, Alana, you speak so passionately about multi-probe galvanic electrolysis and just hair removal in general, right? How
Mhm.
have you kept that passion up?
I think it's building the relationships. And I have to be honest, I don't think I would have met the variety of clients doing anything else but this. I have met some incredible people, people that have done big things, people that have done very meaningful things that are not recognized all over the world. But I can honestly tell you, I have some stories.
I bet. So, Alana, how should practices position permanent removal during consultation so patients understand the role of electrolysis after perhaps laser reduction?
Well, I have to be honest, Don, I think the clients are already onto that. I do. I think that the last 20 years at least, maybe the last five have sped up the process. But like I said, clients, the consumer is smart. They can only be hoodwinked for so long, so I'm a big believer in giving the consumer what they're looking for and not just operating a transactional business because I'm making money from it. And that was the reason I actually got away from single probe, is because I couldn't understand how to master it. I didn't know how many sessions my clients were going to need. It was painful. Single probe was painful. And my clients were asking me questions that I didn't have answers to. It was only when I took the multi-probe galvanic class back in 1997, how long I've been doing it, that I really started to see, oh, wow, the dots are connecting. This is working. And I never went back to single probe because I couldn't figure out when I was going to see results. The clients were paying for a transactional business. They would come in for 15 minutes or a half an hour. But for me, that just didn't do anything. I really wanted to fix their issue. I wanted them to leave after 24 months or 18 months and say, you know what? You really helped me. And when I get these young girls who struggle and took forever to find me, or, the California office, or they hear from somebody that we helped them, that's really why I do what I do.
Mm.
And so I think for me personally, I'm not just satisfied by a transactional business. And if I ever get bored of my clients here, then that would be the time where I would have to step away because I wouldn't do something I wouldn't enjoy.
Got it. Now, you're a pro at this. How should the consultation change when the patient arrives frustrated after having invested in multiple treatments, but not receiving that outcome they're looking for?
I think that laser tech should be honest. And I've had a handful of them when a client comes to us say, you know what, you really shouldn't do your face. But now here's the thing. If the laser tech is going to give a consultation and say you really shouldn't do your face, if they had the multi-probe galvanic system, they would say, you know what, I don't think that laser is appropriate for you, but I would definitely do the galvanic multi-probe for you. So they wouldn't
Mm.
lose the client, and the client would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Whereas if somebody is a perfect laser candidate, by all means, let them know that you're going to do these treatments for them with the laser, and then you're going to move them over to multi-probe when they've exhausted their options. Clients are so happy to hear that this may not be a permanent solution, but we have a permanent solution if you're interested, so that they don't walk away feeling like they were duped.
Or they have to go to Alana.
Right, which is kind of, what I've been doing for the last several years is picking up the slack that was left over from laser because they're like, well, I can't do anything else. It hasn't really worked for me.
That's
So
right.
I don't know.
Alana,
There's such a stigma with laser techs or even electrology techs in my industry that they feel like they can't do both or they can't transition the client into multi-probe. I never saw it as a competition. I always saw it as a complementary service because I know that I can't treat an armpit or two armpits in 10 minutes like laser can, and we never dupe the client about that. So if a client chose to go to laser, and we've had some that have, and now they're stuck with, 20, 30 hairs under the armpit, that would be the best way for them to get permanent results.
okay, so perhaps the combination might be a good idea for some cases.
I think it's a good combination for anybody who's not achieving results or permanent results from laser. If you have the system in your med spa, you should absolutely put the client on that treatment plan afterwards. And they're going to capture 75% of the market that they're not able to capture. I mean, that's a no-brainer to me, right? There's nothing laser can do to get the gray-haired client. And let's face it, clients are aging. That is inevitable. We're all going to age and we're all going to end up with some gray hair. Salt and pepper. Some of us are going to end up with all gray hair. So how do you justify the fact that you're only going to treat the younger population
And leave the rest of the
and leave the
beautiful
rest to
salt and
us?
pepper. Alana, as we approach the end game over here, I would love to know, is there any question that you wish I had asked during our conversation here?
No, I think you're really good about asking questions. We started with a little bit the last time I was on your podcast, and you moved into this space where we kind of picked up where we left off because it's been a while, and we've had some new um, undertakings, the last couple of months, where I am now seeing, like I said, a lot of laser tech saying that it's getting harder to sell the packages. I read the reviews. We have a laser place really close to my location here, and I never see anybody in there.
That's
So I think it's
that's
a
a,
sign of the times. I think that clients are starting to understand after all these laser companies have, put their lasers into med spas that it's just not going to work. It's not going to be permanent.
hmm. Well, that's an eye opener right there. Alana, how can the people find you? Where can they find you at your work?
Yep.
Get in
So they
touch.
can go to www.Beverly Hills Hairfree and Beverly Hills Hairfree Dallas. We have everything listed on our website. They can also reach out through our inquiry online and ask all the questions that they have. And I'm happy to get on the phone with them, do a video chat with them. We have so much information that we've collected. Me personally, also, because I love to do research and I'm a big research nerd. Um, there's definitely options for med spas and laser techs. I don't think they need to throw away their laser. I think that that is a very useful thing. I do think it's limiting, and I think that the consumer is starting to understand that.
Appreciate that, Alana. Alana Zurek, everyone. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Don.